Hey everyone, today I want to welcome you to the next episode of the New Hollywood Podcast. Today we are in for a treat. We have Chadanderson, who's an amazing all-around guy. I met him about a year back at the Internet Earner Summit, where we both spoke about music, entertainment, finance. Some cool facts so that you can get familiar with Chad is he is the only person, to the best of both of our knowledge, that has both a platinum plaque and a cryptocurrency fund. He's currently managing artists such as Pablo Dillon and James Hart. And he's done some amazing stuff in the cryptocurrency space. He spoke on stage with people such as Gary Vaynerchuk a couple weeks ago, which is really, really cool. So thank you for taking some time out of your day to come on the show.
Thanks for having me, Ashwin. Thanks to everyone that's listening and tuning in.
Cool. So Chad, where I like to start off with everyone is, what originally brought you out to LA?
Well, that comes all the way back to the MySpace days. So I basically was one of the first couple 100,000 people that joined MySpace.com back in the early days. And I ended up reaching out to guys like Ted Danik and Tom Anderson and just hitting them up. I was living in Chicago and started basically helping them with the launch parties, and then was hiring models and doing events and strategic marketing, coming up with some of the concepts for our events and parties. And I basically worked there for close to like 5 years from the very, very early days. Was doing it remotely from Chicago and would just fly to like Miami or Vegas. We were doing a lot of parties in Vegas at the time with DJ AM at Pure. And eventually Ted was like, you just need to move to LA. Like, this is where everything is happening. You should be out here. And after probably about a year and a half, 2 years of him kind of prodding me along to like come out here, I finally rented a room out in the valley, got started, and was just like been hustling and grinding it out ever since then. So that's kind of, MySpace was the main driving factor. But I kind of always thought I would end up in California and LA. Chicago is a great city. I love it, but there's winter and I don't like winter. The best weather is in California, in my opinion. So it's kind of a natural fit.
It's pretty natural of a progression because Chicago is where the entertainment industry was before there was LA.
Yeah. And it was great coming up out there. Very, very intense market. There's a lot of competition, but a lot of camaraderie as well. So some of my friends have went on to do amazing things in music and entertainment in general from there. And it's great anytime they're in LA or I'm in Chicago and we can get together, or we'll just see each other randomly at whatever city. Like, you know, traveling is super important to me. So I've always been traveling around, and you start to notice there's a culture of people that are at every event. It doesn't really matter what city it's in. If it's really like the dopest thing, they're going to be there. So having friends like that, doesn't really matter what city you live in. You see them wherever you guys are.
Yeah, the key trendsetters. It's like when I ran into you randomly at Coachella at Puff's party.
Yeah. 3 in the morning.
We were both on the stage, which was hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. And like 3 in the morning at the last day of the whole weekend. And it's just like, we'll just sit down and have a philosophical morning, a
deep
talk.
Conversation.
Yeah. At like 3 in the morning. Yeah, it's stuff like that where it's like some people think that maybe getting started out is hard, but it's actually really easy. You just have to take action. And if you take action, you're going to create opportunities.
Plus, it's really cool because like the people that take action, like when you reached out to Ted and Tom, they already had a platform. There were already people on there. So you got to be smart enough to differentiate yourself so that people give you a response. B, be able to provide a unique value proposition point, and C, be intuitive enough to capitalize on that opportunity to take it to the next level.
Yes. And first, understand from a social standpoint who these people were. Like Tom was easy to identify because he was the first friend everyone had. So, but you're not actually able to really reach him. So for me, I was able to figure out that Ted was really the guy who was doing stuff, and we were already friends on there because they had the top 8 or whatever. You'd be able to basically see where people were. It was initially set up by the date you signed on to the platform and when you created your profile. So just because you were on there, you would show up. It wasn't really an algorithm. It's just, that's how it was. You showed up first on people's stuff if you were there longer. So we had a huge advantage. I think my account was something like 400,000. We ended up having 500 million users or accounts, and 400,000, that's like really, really early on in that landscape. So basically they call it today the power of the DM, but this was just sending a message, right? It was just
pre-DM.
Yeah. I was like, hit him up. And my value proposition was, you're doing the launch party here. I kind of was working with B96 FM station out there. It's like a big music station. I was doing like promotions for different parties and stuff. It was in college, so it was there, and I was working at Hewitt Associates in the finance department and just doing a bunch of different things. So I hit him up and I was like, I'm going to bring 30, 40 people to the Metro in Chicago for the launch party. I don't want any money. Just put me on the guest list. So it was like $20 to get in. I'm like, that's fine. I would totally pay, but if I'm bringing 40 people at $20, like, you could just let me on the guest list. And I met everyone there that night, and we really connected, and that's what led to future opportunities, where it was like, now anything that they were doing in Chicago, they were thinking of me, and I was able to build on that. And we did Hot Import Nights was our next event. And I went and saw how difficult it was with basically running the whole promotion and handling hiring the staff and all that stuff. So I just was like, why don't you just let me help you with this for the next 2 cities? Just give me a trial, right? So now it just expanded from only doing stuff in Chicago to like basically
deepening the relationship.
Well, it was the first step to building out like a national brand, right, for myself. And we basically did the next 2 cities, and he was like, well, I would just want to hire you out the rest of the year. And then it's basically, in college still, and landed a 6-figure consulting gig for MySpace.com when it was becoming the biggest thing in the world. And for the early days when we were there, Ted and I were kind of like out and about the main people that were at like all the stuff. Eventually later it blew up into whole departments and tons of other people doing stuff. And, the whole team was really, really passionate about the project. And it really set the tone for what tech companies could be. And also a cautionary tale of, if rampant corporate power takes over the tech industry, what can happen? And that's basically when people talk about the decline of MySpace, it was Rupert Murdoch and News Corp purchasing them for
Changes
500.
the culture.
Yeah, it went from like the coolest thing to a slowly corporate
politics.
Yeah, all that, and that's basically what ruined it. And that's why, if you see me on the cutting edge of technology and startup culture and all that stuff, because that's really where culture is impacted, and the coolest people and the brightest minds are going to be.
I mean, that's really ties into what we were talking about right before we filmed the podcast. We were looking out at the view up here in Hollywood. You're like, do you know what those cranes mean? Do you know what's going in there? And I'm like, I have no idea. And you're like, if you know what's there, you're literally at the ground floor, and you can figure out and strategically plan to be where you need to be when those things are open.
Yeah.
And I think that's literally exactly a testament to the way that you lived your life and the way that you got in with MySpace. And it's also having those opportunities and being there, you're able to put other people in the right rooms a lot of times, which is something that I know you're doing with your mentorship program, as well as, we're both on the same like set of speaker circuits. There's a lot of people that I know that you've personally taken time out of your day to kind of help and mentor that are significantly younger. And it's a really cool thing that you take time to do that.
Yeah. So the way I look at it, so I have an older brother, his name's Clint, and he's 3 years older than me. So it's like just old enough, like basically it's, kind of the perfect age difference. Cause when I was 18, he was 21. So, but throughout growing up, him and all my older cousins and just really anyone, they always were giving me the best facts and giving me the best information and providing me with the best musical experiences and really looking out for me. So from, I'm from a small town in the suburbs of Chicago growing up. all the game and all the info, a lot of the people that, probably are, are never gonna, they're totally comfortable with being in that situation. They gave me all the best information that they had. And it almost was like distilled in me from a very young age. So now that I'm older and more seasoned entrepreneur and businessman and executive, I feel a really strong sense of giving that back to the younger generation, the people that are coming up now that, I have like this supercharged information that was distilled into me. And it still happens here in LA, like there's a lot of people that I've been really, really lucky to connect with and know over the years, especially now that influencers and, basically being an entrepreneur is cool. Well, it's like all those cool entrepreneurs are people that I met on my journey that I've known for years, that now people are just now getting like exposed to their story, but they're like actual friends of mine.
Because you met them during the struggle period, the Lamborghinis and Ferraris.
Yes.
I like to call it the old school Jeff Bezos photo of him in that one room with the old school computer versus the new Jeff Bezos on the motorcycle and just crushing life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exactly like that. And that's the thing. It's like people want overnight success, and that can happen, but that's not really what it looks like. It's up and down. It's like all the obstacles I've had to overcome to make stuff happen. And I'm still on my journey. Like I've done a lot of amazing stuff, but the end goal isn't reached yet. Some of the stuff that I'm working on now is basically 8 years into a 10-year plan. So over the next 2 years, you're going to see a lot of stuff come together, and you'll be like, wow, that's pretty dope. And I'll be like, yeah, well, I started working on that in 2010, and it was my goal to finish it by 2020.
I mean, dude, it's really amazing being able to connect, like even like us connecting this year again at Entrepreneur Summit. There's a lot of things that both of us were talking about, and both of us were taking the steps toward it. And it's a continuing journey. Life is never about what happens yesterday or what happens tomorrow. It's really about just going with that flow, making the best out of the situations, and also remembering that the worst times and the turbulence is where you really find out who are the people that you're going to be in business with for a longer period of time. There's a lot of people that are there when things are great. When it's that struggle is when you find out who your real friends are.
Yeah. And ultimately, regardless, it's up to you. That radical self-responsibility, that's the number one most important thing, because it's great having a network and friends and all that stuff, but you almost want to, you got to be able to figure it out on your own too, ultimately. So having that support system is great, but it's like, to me, that's like where I would go if I was in like such a place where I really, really needed it. Cause I'm not all the time like asking people for stuff.
Yeah.
I'm probably more of the time doing stuff for other people that people are asking for me. I will on occasion reach out to different people and ask for help and different stuff. What, I guess more or less would equate to favors, but it's very rare. And I think that one of the things that's important to realize with that is that it's basically social capital that hasn't been cashed in yet. So if your net worth is such and such, but then on top of that, your social capital is worth 10 times that, at some point you have that where you can then work some of those things out that maybe it wasn't the right time before. Like I can't really think of a time over the last like couple of years when I was like really, really pressed and needed something from someone and was like, yo, like, come on, man, please. Like, it's stuff like that. Like, please, will you really do this for me? It's not really been that type of situation. But I guess it's important for people to be able to know when it's the right time to do that in a relationship too. Because sometimes if someone's asking you for like a little too much too early on, you're like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like that's especially if it's something that they could figure out on their own without your help.
Yeah, you got to know when to say no.
Yeah. And you got to know when to ask too. Because it's like, if there's something that you can do on your own and you're not doing it, me doing it for you isn't going to benefit you at all.
Well, it's also, you got to show that you're willing to do the work. Like if you're already demonstrating that you're on your path and you're already doing what you can and you need a little bit of help to get to that next level, people are much more interested in doing that than you just have an idea and you haven't put any effort or time into it.
Right. Yeah. So it's a mix. I think that for me personally, I'm not one to hit up a bunch of people to ask for help, but I'm cool with if people ask me for advice or different stuff like that. I have tried to make it so, if someone's in town and they're like, yo, I really need to meet up. Like, I'm just like, cool, well, let's meet up. It's not that hard for me. Just, find a place and link up. My schedule is busy, but it's like, I want to make sure that, especially for the people, like I said, that community of entrepreneurs that are at different events and I've seen put it in the work and they're traveling around, they're building their brand, they're building their business. Those are people I want to get behind and help out. Cause I see like what they're trying to do. That's what I was doing when I'm like, I gotta get out of my situation. I want to play at the highest level. And I think that in tech and entertainment, LA is that place.
It's even more amazingly so for tech in the last couple of years with the advent of Silicon Beach. And even before Silicon Beach, you were part of MySpace, which was an LA-based social media company, which is at the forefront of what social media is today.
Yeah, so Silicon Beach is really interesting because the first time that people were talking about that, there's a guy, his name's Kevin Winston. He has a company called Digital LA, and they do tons of events all over LA, 50,000 person mailing list in tech and entertainment. And Kevin worked in a different department at MySpace back in the day. And when he left, he started doing parties and events. And Ted and I, who were doing parties and events, were then in an office setting, doing work in tech. And it was kind of interesting, the transition. So he was really early on picking up this trend that was happening. And he actually has a festival called Silicon Beach Fest. And it was the first one. And we were the first sponsors of it, presenting sponsors of the first one. And now it's like, he has like multiple day events and it's really grown, and he keeps track of all the different accelerators. And even now that crypto is moving and there's really awesome projects coming out from the LA area, he's like tracking all that stuff too. So when these people that are on trend and seeing the trends and then taking action and help building and guiding them, those are good people to have on your team. And like, even if you're not working specifically on a project together where you're both making money together, kind of having a strategic alliance is important. So I guess one of those things that a lot of people don't realize is like the tech community in LA, it's not that huge. It's thousands of people. It's not millions of people. There's 3 million people that live here. So it's not millions of people that are working in this space. And you just have to have a good reputation and treat people right, and you'll be able to make stuff happen. It's not rocket science.
I mean, I'd even say like the group of entrepreneurs that we're both connected with is equally a small space. Like, they're on a larger platform, but you have to know the right people and you have to demonstrate the right core capabilities and have the right set of values to even have a lot of these people pick up the phone calls.
Yeah.
Which is like what I find to be very cool about our community is like a lot of these people are people that a lot of people idolize or doing things that touch so many different people's lives.
Right.
And for me, I'm like, these are my friends that I call and like they give, like, I remember talking to them about ideas before it comes out into the marketplace and just watching people's minds get blown and being a part of these creative discussions and mastermind groups is really something that we're both blessed to be a part of, because I think being around other people that are thinking about the cutting edge things, the next level of what's happening in entertainment, the next way to distribute content across social media, or even like the stuff in the way that finances get handled on the fintech side is really cool. Because we're already like thinking about it and we're going to be 3 years ahead as each release keeps coming out. Because it's pretty much our group of friends that are coming out with a lot of these new releases and new trends.
Yeah. I'd agree. And that's one of the things why I try to be as giving as I can with my time, supporting younger entrepreneurs, because when they have questions of stuff that maybe I've already lived through my experience, that's easy for me to give them that knowledge, because it's like it's a memory that I have or experience where it can relate to their situation, where it's like, from my perspective of everything I've seen, I'm seeing this happening and this is like what's shaping up. But a lot of the stuff at the same time, I'll call them up and be like, hey, what's going on with this? Or like, how do I get this set up? And like just doing the different things, because they're on the forefront for what is next, And that's one of the things that
it's a cultural exchange.
Exactly. Yeah. And because I was able to kind of be a big part of that growing up and coming up, it's good to be able to guide some of that stuff now, because it's a continuation of all that, but I'm not necessarily out and about every single day as much as I used to be. You know what I mean? I'm trying to be at the right things, but anytime in LA, I was just talking to someone about this the other day. It's like, there's a place you can go to every single night
and every day and every hour.
Yeah. And it's going to be probably, like once of a lifetime opportunities for people that live most other places in the world. That's almost like an everyday occurrence. I'm pretty sure just on the way over here, I saw 50 Cent rolling in his Rolls Royce, pulling up to the podcast studio. And I'm like, oh, like I was on the phone with my brother. And I'm like, yeah, that was cool. Cause that's like something that doesn't really happen all over the place. And, it's interesting with his story on my talk that I was, giving in Vegas. I mentioned him because it's basically crypto culture, the road to mass adoption. And in 2014, his album was for sale and Bitcoin was one of the things that he had available for a payment type. And then last year, they were late last year talking about that he now had like $8 million worth of Bitcoin just through this album sale that not a lot of people even paid. But in 2014, a $15 album was a decent amount of Bitcoin, and with it going up, yeah, it's crazy. And just hearing his story about it, like he had it, then he didn't have it because the bankruptcy, and I'm like, it's just crazy. Like thinking about like how that whole situation went down. It was like, oh yeah, I got this, and now I don't got it. It's just kind of funny because there's like, who's to say really what happened? So it's just kind of one of those things, man. That's really interesting.
That's a trap. Now, where I like to take things is you've had a lot of amazing mentors and amazing people that you've worked with and been able to speak with. What are 3 of some of the best pieces of advice that you've gotten that you could share with our audience?
Well, growing up, I had a lot of friends, but my best friends were my grandma and my grandpa. And that's where if I had any free time, I would be over at their house hanging out. And my grandpa probably had the best advice. And he would say, don't get old. And a lot of people think, well, you're going to get old, right? Like aging is just a natural part of life. But what he meant was like, stay young in your mindset, do what you can to continue to keep up your energy level and, just put in the effort to stay young in a sense of like, don't get old and like grumpy and decrepit, like fight against that basically, and it's funny.
Have an open heart.
Yeah, exactly. Just like be loving, like, have that childlike curiosity and really do things that bring you joy. So I would say that's definitely one advice that like really, really sticks out. Another one, because working with Ted, he was definitely a mentor and still is. He would basically tell me, like I remember when I was getting ready to move to LA, it was like one of the last things we did before I moved here was in college, and it was during the primaries when Obama was behind in the polls against Hillary Clinton. And I was really like, from being from Illinois, and he was a senator at the time, I was really like pro Obama, and I was like really, really, really excited to have opportunity to work on this. So we were doing a thing with MySpace and with MTV where it was like a webcast where he's going to be talking to all the college students, and we did it and it was awesome. And I was talking to Ted after, and he's like basically telling me, whatever problems that you're having with different situations, if you like when you move to LA, if you make more money, you'll probably be able to solve those problems. And, you know, when you first come out here and you're like your first place, like I think you've been out here for a couple of years.
3 years now.
So yeah. So it's like, you're probably paying double or triple what you paid when you moved out here. Right. Like for me, it's so much more. My like monthly expenses are so much more than when I first came out here. And I've never really had to trip on it because it's like, okay, well, what do I do? It's like, well, just go make more money. And if you,
it's a mindset.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, there's
am I going
always
to squander it and need to save more money, or am I going to live in an abundance mentality and figure out I can make more and live more of life?
Right. And the second part of that is you have to also be ready to be frugal and to make sacrifices, because whatever you're earning, that doesn't really matter. It's more about how much you can save and how much you can invest. You know, like that's kind of, I think a lot of people on Instagram and on social media in general are just all about flexing, and they're doing it, and that's great. But if you're flexing like, and it's a stretch, then you're not flexing, then you're just playing yourself. You know, I think it's more important to,
if you're cruising around in a Lamborghini and you live in a $2,000 apartment, you need to get your priorities back in order a little bit.
Yeah, potentially, right? Unless that like
is leading to more business. Sometimes perception is better.
I feel that, and it is showbiz at the end of the day. So I definitely feel that. But I guess like, you know, new Hollywood. So it's like, if it's people that are newer to Hollywood, or if it's younger entrepreneurs that are trying to do it, it's just like, keep things in perspective, what your ultimate goal is, and who gives a fuck what anyone thinks about where you are and what you're doing right now. Don't be on the comparison chart trying to keep up with everyone based on a false perception of reality. Stick to your guns, stick to your goals, and do what you need to do to get to your goals. Don't worry about what everyone else is thinking about it. Just really focus in and make sure that your shit is happening.
I'd say it also comes down to having multiple pipelines. A lot of people put everything in one basket. And even today, for example, I lost one pipeline of business. People are like, wow, you seem really pleasant, even though you lost like a portion of your business. I'm like, that's planned for. I account for losing certain things at certain points. And that's why I've built multiple streams of income, so that my life isn't contingent on any one person or any one business I'm working with needs or flows. Yeah. I live like a holistic life, and I'm able to find my own motivation from within. I'm not doing anything to impress anybody. I'm doing what I can to either move the needle or build the legacy that I want to build.
Yes.
Which is wicked cool. Now, you talked about the corporate days at MySpace. Is that around the time that you decided that, you know, you wanted to change and you got into music?
No, so music has always been a part of my life. I grew up a block away from a roller rink and was skating probably 3 to 4 times a week from the time I was 4 years old. I remember seeing like super early Star Wars movies, like, and when I would roller skate, I felt like I was on the Millennium Falcon. I was just like, I was just rolling, you know, because like when you're like 4 years old, and then you're like, all you've known is walking, and then you're just like fast and just like stunting and just rolling around, like just literally I could do whatever I wanted on skates and still enjoy skating to this day. So growing up in the roller rink, now I'm super exposed to music because you're skating to music the entire time. So the other thing is
Chad skating around.
Yeah.
Some tricks.
The other thing is, so the guy who was the DJ was also the owner. And this is back in the day, this is the 80s. So there's record stores, right? So he had to get all his music from the record store. And since he was basically a family friend, we got introduced to the record store owner, Play by Play Records, shout out. So it's gone now, but
it's definitely gone. I haven't seen a record store other than Amoeba in a long time.
Yeah, they're out there, and support where you can. But back in the day, just because people are used to the streaming culture, all the music would get sent to the record store before it came out. That's how it's there before it comes out, and you can buy it the day that it comes out because it's there before. So we would go and we would get all the dope music before it came out. So I was on the cutting edge of all that stuff, basically 80s, early 90s, having all the single cassette tapes and records and all that stuff before. And the stuff that me and my brother couldn't buy, we would be able to sometimes borrow from the roller rink. So that was kind of like, music has always been there.
Yeah.
For me. It's like the heartbeat of my life. So that's never going to go away. I basically taught myself how to play drums and guitar and bass in high school. There is a band from my hometown called Local H. And you got to understand, like, coming from a small town, you think that's your whole life. You really don't know, like, there's an entire world and you can literally go do whatever you want. And that was the thing. So if anyone's out there and they're listening and they're from a small town, like, go and do it, because it doesn't matter. You can literally just move anywhere you want. Save up your money first. But like for me, I saw this band, they were on tour with Stone Temple Pilots on an arena tour. This is like way after we had already been going to a ton of their shows, but they basically got signed by Island Records and they were on tour with Stone Temple Pilots at the time. And I'm like, we started seeing them in tiny venues. They basically recorded at the local music store where we would go buy our stuff. So that was kind of one of the things that opened my eyes and was like, yo, like, if they did it, like, you can do it. I sat in the same desk as the one dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The teacher would be like, he used to sit there and like, I was wild, so he's like, you're iconoclastic. You're going to do something crazy. Like, you're out there with your thoughts. And I'm like, yeah, man, like, be an individual. That's like, why else are you going to be someone else? Like, be yourself. So,
you can only be the best you. You can't be like, when LeBron was compared to Kobe, you'd always be like, I'm not trying to be the next Kobe. I'm trying to be the first LeBron.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just crazy. Yeah. So music's always been there for me. And then, in high school playing in bands, and then in college playing in bands, and then doing solo stuff, like I really liked putting on stuff for the community and bringing musicians together, and everything that I would do back in the day in my, small town and local area, like, coming up was similar stuff that you can do out here. It's the same stuff. You want to be a part of a community of musicians, and you want to just be cool with everyone, be yourself. Like, it comes together naturally. Like, that's the thing. Like, nothing's ever forced. You can't make something happen. It has to happen organically. And I think that's the best way. So for me, when I moved to LA, I was working with MySpace, and I was still recording a little bit because I, like I said, would play in bands and stuff. But I really just was like, as an artist, I don't really want to do this. I'm just going to go and make money and do cool shit. And if it comes back around, cool, let it come back around. And when it ended up coming back around, it was a different wave. It wasn't me as a manager. It was me more like having this basically expertise. Because when I was in the bands, I'd be the one setting up the shows. I'd be one putting everything on, making sure we got paid. I was basically doing everything a manager would do because we didn't have a manager. There was no one there to do. So I had all that experience from that. So when it came back around for me, it was more in like a management type role. And
You already understood it by doing it for your bandmates.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, like most of the stuff, even though the bands I was in, we never got signed or anything, we would play in front of hundreds of people and like sell merch and CDs and all the stuff that you need to sustain a business, right? As
and in the music benefits of learning from each of those failures, like anything that went wrong while you were in those bands, you were able to translate over to the artists that you were working with, like, hey, don't do this. I've already tried. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah. And to the extent of not necessarily saying don't do this, because I think it's super important for them to make their own decisions, but you could just tell them that this is what I saw and this was what happened in this situation. So these are the pitfalls that you could see, So I'm really blessed. Like right now, James Hart, his music is amazing. He produces all of it himself, and he writes all the lyrics and he performs it, and it's dope. High energy, really something that gets people moving. You don't have to know the songs to be like, I fuck with that. Like
it's very vibey.
Yeah.
It's like fun to listen to.
Exactly. And he's super talented. And on top of that, he also plays lead guitar and helps produce Pablo Dylan stuff. And Pablo is like so in tune with where we are in the world at this moment. And he's writing like really intense songs that are basically poetry over rock music that I think are really going to have a huge impact in the near future. And to have both of those guys as Aru Industries artists, and they're just like amazing, it's just a really, really exciting time. And this is something that I've been building with them for years now. Labels don't do artist development anymore. Like talent managers are the ones that took over that role, and they're doing the artist development. So we've been working on their projects for a really, really long time and developing their skills. And, we have a lot of connections behind the scenes that when people start to see how this wave is going to be forming, it's going to be funny because they're going to be like, yo, congrats. That's awesome. It's like, yeah, we were really building that for a long time. It wasn't like this has been going on for like 5 years plus.
No, you're putting in serious effort. And for the listeners and the people that are watching this that don't know, Pablo Dylan is not just a stage name. He is related to the world famous Bob Dylan. And that's something that a lot of other managers would exploit to get the most music and the most traction out of it. But what's very unique about Pablo and what you guys have done that I really admire is you developed his own sound separate from it. You guys worked the circuits. You guys are actually putting in the time, meeting with songwriters, and he's developed a really amazing sound of his own.
Right. Yeah. So he writes all of his own songs, and we've produced majority of everything in-house. He has worked on some outside artists, and done some stuff with some people and gotten gold platinum plaques, stuff like that. We had a co-management deal with Kanye West's company a couple years back. This guy, Worldwide Tie, who's part of our team, he works as a manager. We co-manage Pablo because there's a lot that we're building for his career, and he also manages Brent Faiyaz, who's blowing up right now. He's he's been on a lot of tours, and Grammy nominated songwriter and performer, and they produced his first song ever, Invite Me. That was like his first little thing that got him going. And we have a really tight knit community with the other artists that we work with. And we were actually a few weeks ago on a vacation and working, and it's funny because even like when we're on vacation, it's like there's the studio set up and we're still in there 10 hours a day. On
Your
vacation.
life blends. I mean, yeah. I tell everybody I live my best life every day. There's no Monday through Friday.
Right.
It just depends on when work comes in and when I can get it done. I still make time for meditation, working out, and eating right, which are all very key to living a fully balanced life.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the thing is, like, we were talking about it, and like we could put on our own festival just with our friends, and it would be like a sold out thing, you know, at probably a pretty big size venue, that we could just do it. You know, I'm kind of almost like saying like, this is probably going to happen at some point, just because it's like, why not? You know, like we're setting up where it's like the wave that we're doing on the music side of things is really, really, I think it's going to be something that's going to be looked back on and be revolutionary.
That's a trip.
Yeah.
It's also cool that you're able to work with Kanye, being another Chicago native like yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an awesome experience. You know, like they basically, it was on the management side. And it was a really cool experience. It was definitely, something that was eye opening, just because like, and especially this was a couple years ago, and he was really, really, really crushing it. Like, that's the thing. Like, people like don't realize it's like Life of Pablo. It's like that's when this was all happening. It's like, well, who's Pablo, right? You don't really know. Is it
Pablo Escobar?
Or is it Pablo Dylan?
You don't know.
You don't know, right? And that's the thing. It's like people don't really think about it, and it's something, you know, being on the podcast, people are obviously are hearing the stories, and I don't want to get too deep into anything, but it's like we've really been doing this stuff, and it's been a big grind behind the scenes, and the push that's coming is going to be really dope. And I think people are in for a treat, because these guys have dedicated every day of their whole life. It's like there's no way that they won't be able to win, because they're really putting in the work. And it's like, I don't have to be like, oh, go to the studio. You know, I've worked with some artists and they're like, yo, man, go in the studio, put in the work and like do it, right? They're in there 6 days a week for 10, 12 hours. And on Sunday, we basically evaluate, you know, how the week went, and then what's next for the next coming week. And I think that's important, because we look at it like it's a startup. You know, yeah, he has connections and stuff like that, and they're connected guys, but at the end of the day, we got to figure it out and make it happen on our own. And when the I guess more things come online, that's great, but it's not something that we're like really pressed about. You know, we're making it happen with what we have. There's not a label behind it. You know, it's independent music, and that's one of the things where a lot more people are catching on to, like, everything is changing.
It's blood, sweat, and tears. It's also blood, sweat, and tears for the promotion and getting plays.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's, you know, and we've been out here moving around doing different one-off shows in different cities and making stuff happen and building up awareness in different markets, but it's been organic. It's not like a huge push of money coming behind stuff and like really, you know, out there with like radio promotion and all that other stuff that you'll get with a major label if you're not shelved or whatever. Politics, the guy who the A&R guy who signed you got a better deal at a different label, so he left, but he was like, you were their pet project, so now he's gone.
You're just shelved.
Yeah. So I mean, it works for some people, and I'm not saying that we won't go that route, but at the same time, why not own your own everything and just blow it out and do it so amazingly that you don't have to worry about what happens, you know? Major labels are huge corporations that could be bought out by huger corporations, and, you know, anything could change. So I think when you're really trying to do what we're doing, which is be the best and really have a impact on culture and on history, and have stuff that's out that stands the test of time and is just legendary in every sense, you kind of have to, when you think about it that way, you kind of have to have control of your own destiny. Because there's stuff that isn't even invented yet that we could be some of the first people to use and utilize and capitalize on. And you know, some of this other stuff is it's slow moving. So like I kind of getting back to what happened with MySpace, I think that, there's just so much opportunity out there for people to do their own thing and start their own companies and really be dope and not have to have all the politics or the, like just giant corporate structure, like one of the guys that I hang out with a lot, he's crushing it, and it's on, mainly online businesses, but he has a staff of 12 people. He's comfortable with that because you don't need 800 people to do stuff if you can do it with 12.
And sometimes too many people make things too complex.
Right. And that's the thing. After I was at MySpace, I worked with Ted at Engage BDR, and we had a staff of 50 people at the time, and we would reach 300 million uniques online through mobile video and display ads. And that would be like, close to the numbers as like Google with thousands of employees and stuff, and it's like some of the stuff that you think that you need like a whole army of people, you really don't anymore.
No, not at all. I mean, I think cryptocurrencies are probably a natural evolution of how banking and payments are going to happen, because it's a very true ledger of an actual transaction. You can't misplace it. You can't lie about it because it's so like spread out, and it's very decentralized, which is very, very cool. And you're kind of a pioneer in that space because you were in it before it was cool.
Yeah, I basically have, when it comes to cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, we've been talking a lot about music, and that's like my passion and my baby, right? Like that's kind of like something that's like the pulse of where I've been and where
your heart is.
Yeah, exactly. So what I saw early on was, it's not so much with like just crypto in general. It's more about the blockchain technology and the decentralized applications that could be built, and how that's going to be disruptive to the music industry. There's a lot of problems with payments right now. There's a lot of problems with how you get paid and how fast you get paid. Like, we see when one of our homies makes a song and it's on the radio and it's popping and it's like really, really going, and then you're like, it may say it's their first big song. They're not getting paid for like 3 quarters. That's a long time. Why are they waiting almost a year to really get paid out for their stuff? Because that's when they need the money. They need the money when it starts popping, because that's when everything, it's like,
opportunities start coming. Exactly. And you need money to cash in on those opportunities.
Yeah. And it's really unfair if you think about it, because it's like, imagine, net 30 is general terms on a business. Like, so if someone sent you an invoice for one of your clients and it's net 3 quarters, you'd be like, no, net 30,
like net 30, net 15.
Yeah, exactly. Or yeah, right. So, and even for all the net 30 people that are out there listening, if your business is set up on the blockchain, it's basically net 0, right? Like you're getting paid right then.
Trip you out. This is something that a model that came on the podcast shared with me. How long do you think it takes before a model for a campaign normally gets paid?
Signed to a major agency, it could be a long time. It's when the agency gets paid from the client.
6 months on average, which tripped me out.
Exactly. Another thing that needs to be disrupted.
Because, dude, you can't. If I work today, I need to eat this month. I can't wait 6 months to eat.
I completely agree. And I've worked with models. I understand their talents in that they put their heart and soul into that. And then I've literally heard major agencies that are based here in LA tell them they can't pay them because the client hasn't paid them yet. And it's like, that's not good business. Like, first off, it's their responsibility to get the client to pay them. You got to be pressed up on them to get paid. If you're not getting paid, well, you get paid because I need my money.
Somebody owes me money. I'm usually about getting that answer and figuring out like a meaningful way to resolve that and reduce that time gap.
Exactly. But so that's the thing. So, this bringing it back to crypto and blockchain, that's another thing that could be potentially disrupted. All right, cool. You want me to shoot with whatever major brand, put the money in a smart contract and put it in escrow. And when I'm done shooting, it hits my account. I'm done. I shot, right? Or like I did what I needed to do. Press send it. You know what I mean? And that's
Which is very cool.
It's like, all right, cool. So that could happen, that could happen with a lot of different things, a lot of different industries that could happen with. And I think that's kind of what we're moving towards. So with cryptoculture.io and the Crypto Culture podcast, basically we're trying to make the road to mass adoption something that we're documenting and also implementing. Where we are right now in the current landscape in a general sense is people are aware, but we haven't even reached mass awareness.
There's not even a critical mass.
Right.
There's a good user base, but it's not a critical mass yet.
And user base is something that's growing, but it's not really huge yet. So things that I like to see and what encourages me are companies like IBM making big pushes into all the different blockchain applications. That there's just a lot of different stuff they're working on. And then even Starbucks, they have 27,000 locations. They're supposed to be coming online soon with Bitcoin payments. And that's something that like a lot of people don't think about it, but if you're seeing the sign in the Starbucks window, and then, like we had the World Cup over the summer, they're doing IBM commercials. These are major companies that are investing time and money into building up this infrastructure. Expedia.com, you can buy plane tickets and hotels with Bitcoin. There's different things that are popping up, even on like James Hart's Shopify store for his merch. It's like you can buy it with Bitcoin. Like, of course, we're going to have that as an option.
You have to.
So we're seeing just a lot of different stuff that's popping up, and there's going to continue to be price volatility. I think a lot of people that are only looking at crypto as far as like what's the price of Bitcoin or what's the price of this, I think that they're going to probably miss out on most of the upside from an investment standpoint because they're thinking about the wrong things. They're thinking about just the price, right? And that they're not thinking about what's the price if 100% of the economy is running on this stuff, right? And I'm not saying that that's going to happen anytime soon or if ever, because I think that I like cash, people like cash, there's a lot of different payment methods that are out there. And I'm not saying it's going to be 100%, but if it's like way less than 1% right now, well, what does 10% look like? And what, when you think about that, like, well, what does 20% look like? And that's maybe aggressive, right? But at some point, something's going to happen that's going to change everything forever. And that's kind of what we've been out there talking about, for the last year and a half. For me, I spoke at USC and all major markets all across the country and been in Forbes a couple of times and really have established myself as someone that knows enough about this stuff to go out and talk to people about it. Because I don't necessarily call myself an expert. I consider myself an advanced student. Right. So I'm just really,
I like that terminology.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm still learning about, there's so much, because there's so much that changes every single day.
Still a lot of developments being made to the technology itself.
Exactly. And trying to see how it all comes together and then being active on the ground and helping make that come together is really something that it gets me excited. And thinking of myself as an advanced student, someone that's continuing to learn about this, it just keeps me open to, I know certain people when we're in the same room, I might just be standing by them, not necessarily fully involved in the conversation, just because I know what I know already. I'm engaged in learning what their thoughts are and what they have to say about it, because that's part of, if they're an expert in a certain aspect of crypto or blockchain, I want to soak that in when I'm around them. And then maybe towards the end of the conversation, ask my questions, you get more information, and then see what makes sense and how that fits into my philosophy, and synthesize that data and see if it forms any new solutions to some of the problems that we see in the world. And you know, the next big idea is out there too. And that's one of the things for me. Like, we have this beautiful skyline of LA and all these different buildings, but what we also have is huge traffic problems, right? So for me, I like to talk about it all the time, and my friends, they listen, because God bless them. But we're gonna have flying cars, you know, definitely.
We just talked about it right before the podcast too.
Yeah, you and the guys.
No, you too.
Well, yeah. So it's something that's gonna happen, right? Like, flying cars sounds crazy, right? So it's like, it's just the best description that we have. It's not necessarily need to be a car that flies. We just call it flying cars because it's not really like fully out there yet. But, you know, it could be a drone type autonomously operated vehicle.
Yeah.
Right. But it's just easier now to call it flying cars. But this stuff is something that's going to happen. And I think blockchain technology is going to help spur its development. And there's a ton of projects, like Uber and NASA are working on a project that's supposed to be coming out in 2020. And there's a bunch of projects all over the world for personal flight vehicles. And
so this is the question I have for you. And it's a question that I get and I hear a lot of times when I'm at blockchain events. There's always a lot of people that come in and they're like, this is a fad. This isn't going to last. Jordan Belfort's been talking about it a lot in the media, is that cryptocurrency is a fad. It's not really backed up by anything. What do you say to people when they approach you with that sort of opinion?
Maybe it's not for you. And that's okay if it's not for you. But the people that do believe in it and do think that it's going to do something are backed by $10 billion over the last 2.5 years worth of funds that they're going to be developing things on. Huge companies like IBM, Microsoft. We talked about Starbucks. You know, there's more and more that are coming on board, and I think it could be something that doesn't get a lot of in your face press, but I would consider the idea that when you have a censorship free and basically corruption free from a sense of like fraud and multiple transactions and stuff like that, if there's a baseline foundation for a new internet that is decentralized and isn't something that can be controlled by any one organization, that unleashes a lot of potential creativity to harness mankind's potential. So if you have something like a brand new internet, it's the thing people don't necessarily understand is the internet of today was not supposed to be built. Like it's not that it's not supposed to be built. Let me correct myself. It was built not for what we use it for today.
It's built for a different intention.
Yes. It was built
repurposed.
It was basically like, this thing is for this. Let's do all this other stuff on top of it. And it's like not really set up for that.
If you talk to people in the 80s, computers were meant to be something for the office, not something for the home.
Exactly. So, you know, for someone like me that, you know, grew up playing cassette tapes and records and then having a computer and going through the whole peer-to-peer era, and then, you know, iPod, and then
now it's just my phone.
Yeah. And now I don't even necessarily have to download anything. It's just all streaming. It's like, think of that and then think of where we are with crypto and blockchain, we're like not even in the CD phase.
Still in infancy
of that. Yeah. So it's like, you know, it's like if we're somewhere in the cassette tape era of that, okay, well, when you look at Moore's law and how technology doubles in what's like 18 months or whatever, it's fast, right? So when you look at it that way, 5 years from now looks very different than the world of today. 5 years from now, there's mass automation. I think crypto and blockchain technology will be, you know, crypto for payments and blockchain for the underlying things that are happening. What people don't understand is you're going to pull out your phone, you're going to go to the Apple App Store, you're going to download an app. It's going to do all the stuff you want it to do, and it's going to be really, really awesome and amazing. And you're going to think it's so cool, and it's going to be built on a blockchain. It's not going to be built on top of today's internet. It's built on something else, right? So it's basically when consumers and just the general public are using things, it's just going to be just like apps and different stuff. They're not going to realize that it's on the blockchain. They're not going to care. It's just going to be a little bit better, and it's going to cut out some of the waste and a lot of the BS that other stuff has. And it's not going to be like in your face, like, oh, this is blockchain, right? It's just going to be
progressive changes slowly.
Yeah, exactly, right? And that's the thing. So for anyone that's doubting it, it's cool, like go for it. But if you're doubting it because you're really just talking about the price, cool. That's like your prerogative. Go for it. Like I said, it's not for everybody. It might not be for you. There was people that were like, I want my horse and buggy. Why would I want a car?
Yeah. Now, for people that
I want flying cars. Like, I'm like, why do I want a car? I'm like, I want my car that flies, right? Like I had, you know, like
everyone thinks it's crazy until it actually starts happening in scale. Now, the other problem that I noticed with a lot of people is when you go to places like the exchanges, they get overwhelmed at looking at these conversion charts. It looks like you're pretty much doing stock trading. It's pretty similar to that.
Yeah.
Now, what I like to do with every one of the experts that I bring onto the podcast is have them kind of go over some actionable steps that people can take towards educating themselves about whatever it is that they do. I think something that would be really interesting to go over with you is how does someone that owns zero cryptocurrency go about like figuring out how to buy it, B, where do they store it, and C, how do they evaluate which ones they should be looking at? Because there's a plethora of options out there right now.
Right. So this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Talk to your financial advisor. As a disclaimer, in general, to keep it 100% as simple, like someone that doesn't know what Bitcoin is or what it does, do some research, Google a few YouTube videos. There's so much information out there, but basically it's a decentralized ledger technology that is all it does. It doesn't do anything other than say, I have this much, I sent this much to this person. These computers validate that that's what happened, and this locks in a block. Now there's a hash that points back to that transaction happening, and now it's something that you see through the blockchain. You can look on the block explorer and see that happened. So the easiest way, and there's a lot of people have different opinions on different stuff, but if you live in the US, the easiest way is to sign up for Coinbase.com on your computer and create an account, and whatever, you don't need to buy an entire Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin is 7,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 or 5,000, you don't have to buy a whole one. That's like the first thing. It's like, oh, it's 20 grand or it's 10 grand. I don't want to spend 10 grand on this. Just put $10 or $100. Something that is a small amount to get started.
Something you're comfortable with.
Yeah. Like I tell people, it's like, well, if you wouldn't put it in a fire to like set it on fire to start a campfire, if you were cold, then don't Like that's probably not like, so that's like an amount, right? So it's like certain people, it's like, okay, $100, right? I don't know everyone listening's financial situation, but something that you're comfortable with, and just buy that amount. If
whatever
you're doing
your risk tolerance is, that's what I call it.
If you're doing something small and it's like $100 or less, you could potentially, if you'd want to, keep it on Coinbase, and they have their cold storage vault that you can put it in and keep it in, right? So the number one thing is security. So if you have more than that and you want to do something with it, there's hardware wallets. Nano Ledger and Trezor are some of them. There's other ones that are out there. But in general, most people say hardware wallets are going to be one of the ways that you can store it securely offline. Because the main thing is you don't want it sitting on the internet. Basically, that leaves you open. So in general, you're going to want to keep it somewhere safe for you. There's different custody companies that have large vaults that are popping up, and they potentially can keep it for you. That's for more like institutional level investors. For that's like huge money. But in general, if you have a small amount, you can secure it on your own. The other thing is you just have to, the reason why I say get involved is because now if you have skin in the game, now you're going to want to know more about what's going on. You want to do research beforehand, but it's important if you're invested in something, you're going to want to know more about it in general, right? So you're going to educate yourself. And that's one of the things that a lot of people, maybe they'll just put money in and dump it and then just like leave it and just like not really think about it, which is cool too. That can be a strategy, but I think that people will get more out of it if they learn more about the space. And then from there, if you want to expand into other coins or altcoins, that's cool. That's up to you. But I would say that you have to be careful if you're trading, in general, buy low and sell high. So learning how to read charts from a technical analysis standpoint, if you're trading, that's super important. That's like one of the most important things. And then also having an understanding of fundamental analysis, which is basically evaluating what's happening in the real world with the project, or, how many GitHub commits they have, for example, which is developers saying they're going to build such and such functions onto things and the timeline. And if they're hitting them, like having awareness of this other stuff and a plethora of information so you can make those decisions. And ideally, in a perfect world, your fundamental analysis would tell you that it looks like something may be big building here. And then if you're on the charts and the price is in the low area, if all those things come together, that's a good time to potentially make a trade.
Find that there's no one really working at the company. There's one person, maybe a part-time guy.
Yeah,
you can get some other info on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have to have that awareness on both sides. So, trading is rough. It's not for everybody. In crypto, they have the people that just hodl. They just want to hold on to, their Bitcoin and wait for like 10 years, and they're committed to not selling it regardless. And that's cool too. So, if there's someone that's out there and they're like on the fence about it, it's like, dude, put in $10 and then just who cares?
That's true.
If you want to forget about it, forget about it. But at least you have that opportunity where it's like, if it does go crazy, because a lot of people talk about the price all the time, and they say that it could be like one Bitcoin could be like $100,000 or $200,000. It's like, well, if that's the case and it's way less than that now, like I want more of those instead of having less of those, right? And that's the thing why I'm mainly focusing on Bitcoin, is because being that it's the first one and the one that's most well known. As people continue to get into the space, it's the most likely one that they're going to start out with. So as more people come into the space and start off with that one, that in and of itself could potentially make the price rise just in that alone. This is not talking about the billions and trillions of dollars that are literally waiting on the sidelines for the next set of regulations and companies that can do some things like custody and all that. If that money comes into the space, it's going to be off to the races. If it doesn't, I think there's still going to be enough usage and adoption through people just believing in it. And the more they hear about it, getting excited about it and using it. So there's two scenarios which could lead to the price increase that as an investor you would want. So you just kind of have to weigh it out and be like, what's more likely to happen? This stuff happening or it not happening? And if you think that you're willing to put your money up and bet that it will happen, then you may be on the right side. If you sit on the sidelines, you're like, oh no, that's not going to happen. And then you miss out. Well, then you miss out because there's lots of opportunities, this isn't the only one that's out there. For the people that it speaks to and they're excited about it, go for it.
I love it, man. I think that's really dope. And I think that's great advice for people to take into consideration because it's really something that scares a lot of people. But once you break it down to that level of these are a couple of basic websites you can buy something on, and then you figure out a research pattern that works for you and you start learning. With everything that goes right, you learn something, and everything that goes wrong, you learn another story, and I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Which is so key. Before we kind of wrap up, one thing I like to do with everybody is let you share where people can connect with you and a couple of things that people should be on the lookout for, especially for the people that really enjoyed this brief intro at a very basic level of what cryptocurrency is. Chad, I've seen him speak a ton of times, and he's very intuitive about understanding people's skepticisms, but also coming at it from a very logical and rational standpoint at how people should be looking at that market. So definitely be sure to tune into his podcast.
Yeah. So Crypto Culture is the podcast. Going to have a lot of awesome people on there. I've already interviewed Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's someone that really has his pulse on what's happening, and we hear from him about how he thinks we get to mass adoption, and that's one of the key things that I'm talking to people about. And I'm going to be bringing on friends from the music and entertainment world, and also the crypto and blockchain world, and really just get more exposure to more people. I was with a manager who manages some pretty big bands and up and coming bands, and we were just hanging out after the concert for one of his shows, and I was like, we were talking about it, and he got excited and pulled out his Cash App and just bought $100, his first $100. He was thinking about it. I'm like, well, you have Cash App? And he just bought it. So, we're going to be doing fun stuff like that. I think some people that come on, if they maybe haven't done it, it's not really like a sales thing to them, but ideally by the end, there's a lot of people that move culture, and these are the people that we're going to be talking about. So, definitely check that out. And also, if you want to, I post a lot of content on my personal Instagram. It's Chadaroo LA, CHADAROOLA. And that's a place where I have a lot of information on what I'm up to, what my artists are up to. And, definitely check out Pablo Dillon and James Hart on Instagram as well. We have new music coming out all the time, and shows and merch and all that stuff, and continue to build that up. And it's just step by step, brick by brick. And, you're part of the journey. And thanks so much for having me as a guest today. I really enjoyed this.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you all for tuning into the New Hollywood Podcast. It's your host, Ed Ashwin Jacob, on pretty much every social media platform. You can download the podcast on iTunes, Spotify. We'll be putting video on Facebook and YouTube. Anywhere that you can find a podcast, it's going to be there. Be sure to stay in touch with us on Instagram as well. We're at New Hollywood. Thank you for tuning in, and look forward to bringing other amazing thought leaders for you all to learn from.